Part 1. Mockery in the Alien Court. The chamber of the Verithian palace was alive with light, but not warmth. 1,000 bioluminescent filaments traced along the walls and ceilings, pulsing with subtle rhythms, amplifying every movement, every whisper. The court had gathered, alien dignitaries, advisors, and the young Princess Liriath at its center, seated upon a floating platform that shimmered like liquid metal. I, Corporal Elias Ward, human soldier assigned as a liaison to the Verithian Empire, had come to observe. Not to participate. Not to question the traditions. But as always, to follow orders. The princess laughed. A sharp, echoing sound, like crystal striking crystal. Her gaze fixed on me, piercing. You dare to stand there, she mocked, as if you belong in this court. A human. How quaint. I kept my posture rigid. The palace demanded respect, even from outsiders, but my patience was thinning. Her laugh turned cruel. Do your people teach you nothing? Your armor is weak. Your discipline, laughable. You would fall under my command in a heartbeat. I stayed silent. Observing. Waiting. 1. The first spark. She stepped forward, and the court tensed. In her presence, power was absolute not just by lineage, but by aura. The air seemed to bend around her movements. Perhaps, she said, he does not understand his place. Shall we demonstrate? Before I could react, she raised a crystalline gauntlet, and a pulse of energy shot toward me. Reflexively, I dodged, narrowly avoiding the burn that would have seared flesh and armor alike. Gasps echoed. A few Verithians shifted uneasily. But I did not flinch again. Her eyes narrowed. Interesting, she whispered. 2. The court spectacle. The chamber erupted into murmurs. Liriath's gaze was playful but deadly. Do you humans train your soldiers to withstand mockery? Or only combat? I said nothing. Silence, in a room like this, was noticed. It made some laugh, made some uncomfortable, but most importantly, it made her pause. She tilted her head. Perhaps he is afraid. A challenge. Her words floated like sparks in the air. I met her gaze steadily. Fear is not weakness, I said finally, my voice low but clear. It is preparation. The court fell silent. Even the princess blinked once, sharply. 3. The first test. Liriath's smirk returned, sharper this time. Bold words for a human. Let us see if you can match them. With a swift motion, she raised a small device from her wrist. A mesh of energy formed around her body armor unlike any I had seen. Lightweight, adaptive, almost alive. Its shimmer shifted colors with her every heartbeat. Try to strike me now, she said. The court watched. My fingers tightened on the hilt of my plasma sidearm. But I did not strike. Not yet. Instead, I observed her movements, the subtle flick of her wrist, the almost imperceptible weight shift in her stance, the timing between her breaths. Every millisecond counted. Her laugh came again. You will never land a blow. I smiled faintly. Not at her arrogance, but at the certainty that every armor has a weakness. 4. The first move. When she lunged, I sidestepped, exploiting the tiniest gap in her adaptive armor. My own weapon was of human make, heavy, precise, simple. I struck not at her body, but at the energy nodes controlling her armor's flexibility. A flash. A hiss. The armor flared bright and then dimmed. The princess froze. The court gasped. She was still standing, but for the first time, she could not move freely. I spoke then, calm but firm. You mock me, yet you cannot anticipate the human way. 5. Silence becomes power. Her shock was visible. Her filaments, normally radiating confidence and authority, dimmed slightly. Her voice, when she tried to speak, was cut off by the failing energy mesh. For a moment, she was speechless, a state no one had seen her in. The court tensed, unsure how to react. I stepped closer, my voice steady. Words alone do not command respect. Actions do. The princess's wide, unblinking eyes were the only acknowledgement I needed. Part 2. The princess struggles. The court was frozen in a mixture of awe and shock. Liriath had been unmoving, her adaptive armor, which had seemed invincible, now flickered weakly around her body. The energy mesh that had projected authority, playfulness, and intimidation all at once was failing. She had mocked me, the human soldier. Now, for the first time, she was speechless. 6. The Queen's watchful eye. From the shadows, Queen Eorevane observed. Her filaments glowed faintly, casting long, subtle patterns across the chamber. You see, she whispered to no one in particular, that silence and patience can speak louder than arrogance and laughter. I felt her awareness brush against me, always present, always measuring. The Queen rarely interfered directly, but her influence shaped the room like a tide shaping sand. Liriatha's eyes darted around, realizing she could not rely on mockery alone. 7. The silence that speaks. I didn't advance aggressively. I didn't gloat. I simply stood, composed, letting the weight of my silence assert itself. The court shifted uneasily. Silence has power, I reminded myself, and now it was mine. The princess's lips parted, attempting to form words, but her voice caught. The armor's nodes were overloaded, disrupting her ability to speak, effectively rendering her helpless in her own mockery. I moved closer, calmly. You can laugh at humans, I said softly, but never underestimate the precision of their action. 8. A lesson in respect. Her body trembled slightly, not with fear, but with surprise, frustration, and a realization that her dominance was challenged. 4 centuries, the Varithian princesses had been untouchable. Their skill, intelligence, and adaptive technology ensured it. No outsider, not human, not alien, had ever bested them in a direct confrontation. And yet, here I was. The court whispered. Even senior advisors, who had grown used to the princess's authority, began nodding subtly. Respect, long denied to humans, was forming in small, silent increments. 9. The princess strikes back. Liriath wasn't defeated, far from it. Her mind raced. She calculated every possibility: retreat, attack, negotiation, distraction. Finally, she shifted her stance, energy nodes sparking erratically. She whispered, not at me, but at her personal devices, a command that released a surge of kinetic energy from her armor. I dodged instinctively, countering by redirecting my own armor's shield interface, a hybrid human tech I had modified after months of study. We moved in a dance of action and counteraction, neither fully speaking, yet every movement communicating intent. The court leaned in, enthralled. This was no ordinary duel, it was a test of intelligence, reflex, and willpower. 10. The turning point. Suddenly, I noticed a faint irregularity in the armor's adaptive flow. A subtle lag, a tiny node that hadn't synced with the rest. I struck it, not with force, but precision. The armor flared and then stabilized unevenly, leaving one shoulder partially exposed. Liriath froze mid-motion. For the second time, she was unable to speak, her authority visibly shaken. I spoke, my tone calm but unwavering. Control comes not from laughter, but understanding. Observe, adapt, and act. That is true power. The chamber was silent. Even the Queen's filaments pulsed softly, acknowledging my words. 11. Aftermath of the duel. Liriath lowered her arms. Her pride hurt, but she was learning. She looked at me, not with mockery, not with fear, but with curiosity. Perhaps, she whispered, you are more than I expected. I nodded, understanding the delicate balance now forming. The princess had been humbled, but only slightly. There was still potential for alliance or rivalry. For the human soldier, this was only the beginning. 12. The court recognizes. As the court resumed its functions, the whispers shifted. A human had bested the Varithian princess, even if briefly. Elias Ward was no longer merely a soldier, he was a presence to be reckoned with. The princess, though still proud and sharp-tongued, now regarded him with caution. The queen's gaze lingered on me. She did not need to speak. Her approval and her silent challenge was enough. Part 3. The struggle for authority. The aftermath of our duel left the palace tense. Lyriatha's usual laughter was absent. The court noticed her hesitation, and some of her advisers dared to question her for the first time. Yet she remained a princess, proud, intelligent, and dangerous. And I, human soldier, was now a presence that could not be ignored. 13. The princess's private council. Later that evening, Lyriath convened a private council in the palace's shadowed wing. Only her closest advisers were present. This human, she hissed, pacing, has disrupted everything. My authority, my command, the image I have cultivated for centuries. We must correct this. One of her advisers, a wiry alien with translucent skin, nodded. He is skilled, princess. Perhaps even dangerous. But he is still human. He lacks our intuition, our full understanding of the court. Lyriatha's eyes narrowed. Dangerous, she repeated. Danger is something I have never feared. He will learn that. And if necessary, I will teach him myself. 14. Elias observes. I learned of this council not by spies or informants, but by listening to subtle shifts in the palace's energy currents, a trick I had mastered while observing the queen and the princess. The walls themselves whispered secrets. Lights pulsed faintly when intrigue was near. Doors seemed to sway slightly, subtly signaling the movement of hidden courtiers. I realized, in the Varithian court, observation was as important as action. And I had become adept at both. 15. A challenge issued. The next day, Lyriath approached me under the guise of diplomacy. Her voice was measured, her filaments glowing softly, a mixture of warning and calculation. You bested me yesterday, she said, but that does not mean you have understood the Varithian way. I inclined my head slightly. I am still learning, I replied. But I observe. That is all I need. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Observation without understanding is useless. Let us see if you survive a true test. 16. The test of courage. The princess led me to the palace's combat dome, a massive arena suspended in zero-gravity fields. The walls projected holographic landscapes, from scorched deserts to icy tundras, simulating every known battleground. You will face the court's elite, she said. Not for sport. Not for honor. But to see if a human can adapt to Varithian combat and survive without mockery to guide him. A dozen soldiers appeared, each a master of advanced combat techniques, wielding energy weapons, kinetic shields, and agility enhancements. I assessed them silently, calculating patterns, observing timing, watching for weaknesses. The princess watched from above, a predator studying a prey she could not yet control. 17. The first strike. As the battle began, I moved with precision and patience. I dodged kinetic strikes with minimal effort. I redirected energy pulses, turning one soldier's attack against another. I struck not to kill, but to incapacitate with exact timing. The court gasped. A human not enhanced, not adapted to our technology, was surviving every maneuver. Lyriatha's voice rang out, interesting, perhaps more clever than I anticipated. 18. Mutual respect begins. Hours passed. The dome's energy projections shifted, the combatants exhausted, yet I remained composed. Lirioth descended to the arena floor. For the first time, she approached me without mockery, without challenge, without a mask of superiority. "You move differently than any soldier I've seen," she admitted. "Not fast. Not strong. But precise. Patient. Adaptable." I nodded. "I observe first. I act second. That is all any soldier needs to survive." She studied me silently. The spark of rivalry remained, but now it was tempered with curiosity. 19. The court's shifting allegiances. News of my success in the combat dome spread through the palace. Some advisors quietly shifted their allegiance toward me, seeing practical skill over birthright. Lirioth noticed. Her pride bristled, but she could not dismiss my effectiveness. She approached me privately later. "You have unsettled the court," she whispered. "And yet, I cannot decide whether I respect or despise you." I smiled faintly. "Respect comes with understanding. I hope one day you see both in me." Her filaments pulsed slowly, almost like a heartbeat. Silence lingered between us, tense, loaded, and filled with unspoken challenges. 20. The foreshadowing of intrigue. As night fell, the palace hummed with secrets. Shadows moved in corridors unseen, whispers passed behind closed doors, and plans, some subtle, some dangerous, were already forming. I knew that surviving the princess was only the beginning. Rival factions would test me. Court politics would become a battlefield as lethal as the combat dome. Lirioth herself would continue to challenge me not just in combat, but in will, cunning, and influence. And I was ready. For the human soldier, the true war had only just begun. Part 4. Shadows within the palace. The Varithian palace never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours, shadows moved between corridors, whispered commands traveled unseen, and the palace's filaments pulsed with faint patterns, hinting at secrets not meant for outsiders. I had learned to read them, to see the flow of influence, detect shifts in attention, and anticipate movements long before they became actions. And now, those skills would be tested. 21. A disturbance in the court. The morning light revealed subtle signs, doors slightly ajar, energy conduits flickering out of sequence, low-level guards acting unusually. Lirioth noticed, too. Her filaments glowed dimly, and she whispered to her advisors. "Something stirs. Someone moves unseen. Keep your eyes open." I observed silently. Not a word, not a gesture. Silence allowed me to notice patterns others missed. It was then I detected a hidden energy signature, an intrusion in the palace's lower levels. Someone had bypassed security systems entirely. 22. The invisible adversary. The intruder was skilled, more than a common thief. The energy traces suggested military-grade stealth tech, adapted for the palace's defenses. I followed the signal, careful to remain unseen. Every corridor presented a choice: move quickly and risk detection, or move slowly and gather information. I chose the latter. The intruder paused near the archives, a secure room containing strategic intelligence, battle plans, and Varithian technology schematics. 23. OH's intervention. Before I could act, Lirioth appeared silently from above. Her gaze met mine, and I felt a mixture of warning and approval. "This one is clever," she whispered, her voice low. "But they underestimate human observation." Together, we watched. Silence became our shared tool, each of us interpreting subtle cues in the intruder's movement. I realized then that our rivalry had evolved. It was no longer mockery versus defiance, it was coordination born of mutual respect, albeit unspoken. 24. The trap unveiled. The intruder moved to the archive's control panel. My fingers tightened on my weapon, but again, patience was key. Liriath signaled subtly. I understood. Using a combination of stealth maneuvers and adaptive armor disruption, I incapacitated the intruder without alerting the rest of the palace. The intruder struggled, then froze, revealing their identity. A rogue faction of the Silent Hand, an organization that had opposed the palace for generations, had infiltrated the Varithian court. 25. The princess reconsiders. Liriatha's eyes widened slightly. This was beyond her expectations. You handled that well, she admitted softly. Better than I would have. Perhaps. You are more than a soldier. I nodded. Observation and patience allow action to be precise. Power alone cannot solve every problem. She studied me, and for the first time, I detected a glimmer of genuine admiration, though her pride still remained intact. 26. The political implications. The palace was shaken. The presence of the Silent Hand faction meant that political stability was at risk. Even minor whispers of the intruder's success could spark rebellion in other systems. The Queen convened a secret council that evening. I was present not as a guest, but as an advisor. My observations, previously limited to survival and combat, were now crucial to strategy. Liriath sat beside me, a subtle shift in posture acknowledging my role. You have proven useful, she said quietly. Perhaps too useful. I remained silent. Sometimes, that was the greatest strength. 27. Training in shadows. Following the intrusion, Liriath invited me to a private training session in the palace's zero-gravity combat chambers. Understanding your opponent is vital, she said, and you must understand me as well. We sparred not with weapons this time, but with strategy and movement. Every gesture, every feint, every subtle shift in weight was a lesson. I adapted to her speed and skill, while she learned from my patience and observation. 4 hours, we tested each other, pushing limits, uncovering weaknesses, and gaining insight into how silence could dominate speech. By the end, both of us were exhausted, yet there was a new understanding between us, rivalry tempered with respect. 28. The seed of alliance. Liriath spoke softly as we rested. You may be human, but you are unlike any I have encountered. Your actions, your patience, they command attention. I replied simply, I observe, I adapt, I act. That is all anyone needs to do, regardless of species. She paused. Perhaps, we can be more than rivals. Perhaps we can be allies. The notion was unspoken yet powerful. Together, we could protect the palace, outwit intruders, and navigate the subtle politics of the galaxy. 29. Foreshadowing danger. Even as understanding and respect grew, the palace's filaments pulsed uneasily. The Silent Hand's reach extended further than we realized. Hidden factions plotted in shadows. Other star systems watched the Varithian court. Liriatha's pride, though tempered, remained a wild card. I understood then that survival required more than combat skill, it required insight, timing, and the ability to act in silence while others shouted. And for the human soldier, the true test had only begun. Part 5. The Web Titans. The palace felt alive with tension. Every hallway whispered secrets. Every flicker of light hinted at movement. Even the walls seemed to pulse with awareness, an awareness that suggested nothing went unnoticed. And yet, the palace's greatest threats were often invisible. 30. A secret message. Early one cycle, I intercepted a message hidden in the palace's energy network. Encoded with a method even the princess's most trusted advisors did not recognize, it suggested a coordinated assault by rogue factions within and outside the palace. Plans to destabilize the Varithian throne. Evidence that the Silent Hand had allies embedded in the palace itself. I traced the signal quietly, careful not to alert anyone, especially not the princess. 31. The princess's surprise. Later, Lirioth approached me, noticing my unusual focus. "You seem distracted," she said, tilting her head, curiosity shining in her glowing filaments. I did not answer immediately. Instead, I revealed a fragment of what I had discovered. "The palace is not safe," I said. "There are forces here we have not yet identified. They are watching, planning, waiting for a mistake." Her eyes narrowed. For the first time, she did not mock me. Instead, she nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. 32. Alliance in action. We agreed to work together, carefully, quietly, and without attracting attention. Lirioth provided insight into palace routines, energy flows, and potential points of vulnerability. I applied my human-trained observation and strategy, analyzing patterns and predicting moves. Together, we moved silently through the palace, uncovering hidden plots, neutralizing threats before they could act, and exposing traitors without alarming the rest of the court. 33. The first intrigue uncovered. In the Library of Ancient Archives, we discovered a rogue advisor, one of the princess's most trusted aides, secretly communicating with the Silent Hand. The man's filaments shimmered faintly, betraying his intent. Lirioth and I coordinated without words. She distracted him with subtle manipulations of light and sound. I approached from behind, disabling his communication array and seizing the encoded data. By the time he realized he had been discovered, it was too late. 34. A lesson in trust. Lirioth glanced at me afterward. "You act without hesitation, without ego. That is rare." I replied simply, "Trust is built in action, not words. And patience ensures survival." She studied me, a mix of intrigue and respect in her gaze. Our rivalry had transformed into a silent alliance, each aware of the other's skill, each learning from the other. 35. The court reacts. The exposure of the rogue advisor sent ripples through the court. Some members were furious at his betrayal. Others realized that human soldiers were capable of far more than anyone expected. The princess's authority, though initially challenged by my earlier duel, strengthened as she demonstrated wisdom in managing the situation. Even the queen observed quietly, filaments glowing with faint approval. 36. The Silent Hand strikes. Despite our vigilance, the Silent Hand was not idle. That night, a coordinated strike occurred in the palace's lower levels, energy grids sabotaged, security drones disabled, and a small group of mercenaries infiltrating the central chamber. Lirioth and I acted immediately. I moved through shadows, neutralizing threats with precise, non-lethal strikes. She manipulated palace energy flows, sealing corridors and isolating intruders. Together, we prevented the palace from descending into chaos. The court never realized how close disaster had come. 37. The princess challenged. After the attack, Lirioth confronted me privately. "You are remarkable," she admitted. "Not only in combat, but in strategy, observation, everything I underestimated." I replied quietly, "You taught me much in the first duel." I simply applied it. Her filaments pulsed softly, a silent acknowledgement that our partnership had evolved. 38. Foreshadowing greater threats. Even as the palace stabilized, I knew the Silent Hand had far-reaching plans. Their network was extensive, stretching across multiple star systems. The princess's pride remained both an asset and a vulnerability. And my role as a human soldier capable of silent, decisive action would be tested as never before. The true test of our alliance and the palace itself was yet to come. Part 6. The Palace on the Brink. The palace had never felt so tense. Even the filaments lining the walls seemed to vibrate faster than usual, responding to the unease that now filled the halls. The Silent Hand had escalated. Their infiltrators, previously limited to whispers and covert actions, were now moving boldly, testing both the princess and the palace defenses. 39. The alarm sounds. At the stroke of the third cycle, the palace's emergency signals flared. Red energy pulses rippled through every hallway, echoing ominously. I was already moving, instincts kicking in before thought. Liriath appeared at the center of the corridor, her armor partially active, filaments glowing bright. "They've breached the inner wards," she said, her voice steady but tense. I nodded. "Then we act, now." 40. The silent strike. The first wave of intruders moved silently, but I could anticipate them. Months of observation had taught me how to detect even the slightest irregularity in movement or energy flow. I disabled 3 intruders with a single, precise strike. Liriath redirected the energy shields, cutting off reinforcements before they could reach the central chamber. Together, we moved like shadows, coordinating silently, each aware of the other's position. The palace itself seemed to respond, corridors shifting subtly to guide our movement and hinder the intruders. 41. The princess tested. At one point, Liriath found herself cornered by a pair of mercenaries using energy-based restraints. I acted without hesitation. Using a combination of kinetic shielding and leverage, I freed her, redirecting the assailants into containment zones. She looked at me, breathing heavily. "You move differently than any Varithian warrior I've ever seen," she said. I kept my focus. Observation and patience make strength. That is all a soldier needs. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine trust in her eyes. 42. The heart of the invasion. We reached the central chamber, the core of the palace's command network. Here, the silent hand had planted a sophisticated device designed to cripple the palace's energy control. Liriath and I assessed it quickly. She understood the alien technology, but lacked the precision to disable it safely. I applied human engineering techniques, carefully dismantling key nodes while avoiding catastrophic overload. The device emitted a high-pitched hum, energy fluctuating wildly. One wrong move, and the palace could collapse. With precise timing and coordination, we neutralized the threat. The hum ceased. The palace's energy stabilized. 43. Aftermath of the attack. The Silent Hand's operatives were either captured or fled. Their infiltration had been foiled. The palace breathed again, but the battle had changed everything. Liriath's respect for me had grown beyond admiration, it was now tempered with trust. My understanding of the Varithian court deepened, politics, strategy, and combat were intertwined like never before. Even the queen observed quietly, filaments pulsing with faint approval. Liriath approached me privately. "You've done more than survive," she said. "You've saved the palace and me." "I underestimated you," I replied. "It was not survival alone. It was observation, understanding, and action when necessary. That is all anyone can do." 44. Foreshadowing greater danger. Even as the palace celebrated its survival, a deeper threat loomed. The Silent Hand had survived. Their influence extended beyond the Varithian court. There were alien factions in the outer systems ready to exploit instability. And the princess, though growing to trust me, remained proud and unpredictable. The war for the palace and the galaxy was far from over. I realized then, our alliance would be tested again, in ways neither of us could yet imagine. Part 7. The Silent Hand Strikes Back. The palace had regained a fragile calm. Filaments glowed softly along the walls, and whispers of the previous attack had mostly died down. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, tension simmered. The Silent Hand had regrouped. Their influence stretched far beyond the palace. And now, they were coming for us in force. 45. The warning. The first indication came as a ripple through the palace's energy fields, a subtle disturbance only noticeable to those who had learned to read the filaments and pulse flows. I detected it immediately. "They are approaching," I whispered to Liriath. Her filaments brightened sharply, a mixture of warning and focus. "I had hoped they would stay in the shadows," she said, her voice tense. "But they are bold. Very bold." 46. Preparing the palace. Together, we moved quickly, silently coordinating defenses. Security drones were redeployed to vulnerable sectors. Energy shields were reinforced around key corridors and the central command hub. Strategic traps were set along likely invasion routes. Liriath's understanding of her palace combined with my human tactical planning created a formidable defense. The palace itself became a weapon, every corridor, every chamber, every pulse of energy carefully orchestrated to channel intruders into disadvantageous positions. 47. The assault begins. At the third cycle, the silent hand struck. Teams of infiltrators breached outer walls using stealth tech. Mercenaries targeted strategic energy nodes. Saboteurs attempted to seize control of the palace's core. The corridors erupted with energy clashes. Laser pulses reflected off polished walls, shadows danced across ceilings, and the palace's filaments responded, guiding allies and hindering intruders. Liriath and I moved together like a single unit, anticipating each move, countering attacks, and turning the palace itself into a labyrinth of defense. 48. Strategy and action. The intruders were relentless. Some tried brute force. I redirected their kinetic energy back at them, disabling them without lethal force. Others relied on misdirection. Liriath used the palace's energy flows to isolate them, cutting them off from each other. A third group attempted hacking, but I neutralized their devices, rewiring their interference back into containment protocols. Every step, every move was coordinated silently, an unspoken dance of action and counteraction. 49. The princess under pressure. Even Liriath was tested. One of the silent hand leaders, a Verithian defector with advanced combat abilities, cornered her in the command hub. Her usual confidence faltered slightly, but she did not panic. I intervened, striking with precision, disarming the intruder while leaving him alive for interrogation. She looked at me, filaments glowing faintly in what I could only interpret as gratitude and trust. 50. Turning the tide. With the silent hand's forces stalled and scattered, Liriath and I executed a coordinated counterattack. Energy barriers funneled enemies into containment zones. Strategic use of palace drones created choke points. Targeted strikes neutralized leadership without unnecessary bloodshed. By the final phase, the palace stood secure. The silent hand had been repelled for now. The court erupted in relief, though unaware of how narrowly disaster had been avoided. 51. Aftermath and reflection. In the quiet that followed, Liriath and I stood in the central chamber, watching the filaments pulse with renewed energy. "You were extraordinary today," she said, voice low. "I underestimated your capability, and your patience." I nodded. Observation, timing, and action. That is all a soldier needs. Power alone cannot protect this palace. For the first time, the princess's filaments pulsed softly in alignment with mine, a subtle gesture of mutual respect. 52. Foreshadowing greater threats. Even as the palace celebrated, the silent hand's influence lingered like a shadow. There were whispers of a greater leader orchestrating their actions. Outer systems were mobilizing in secret, waiting for the palace to weaken. Liriath and I both knew that our alliance, though strengthened, would be tested further. And I understood, this was only the beginning of a war that could span the entire galaxy. Part 8. Shadows across the stars. The palace had survived, But the Silent Hand had not been defeated, only delayed. Reports from distant star systems arrived in the central command hub. Supply lines disrupted in nearby colonies. Rogue fleets attacking outposts. Communications sabotaged to isolate the Verithian Empire. Lyriath and I realized the conflict had outgrown the palace walls. The war had gone galactic. 53. A call to action. The Queen summoned us privately. Her filaments glowed a pale blue, signaling seriousness. The Silent Hand is no longer just a palace threat, she said. They aim to destabilize the entire empire. You too must leave the palace and track their operations across multiple systems. Lyriath's eyes narrowed. It is dangerous. The Silent Hand's reach is long, and they will anticipate our moves. I nodded. We adapt. That is how we survive. The Queen's gaze lingered on us. Do not fail. The stability of the Empire depends on you. 54. Navigating the stars. We boarded a sleek, adaptive Verithian vessel, designed for stealth, speed, and combat. I monitored energy flows and calculated potential threats. Lyriath accessed intelligence on known Silent Hand operations. Together, we mapped a route to intercept them before they could consolidate power. The stars streaked past as we jumped from system to system. Each planet held potential allies or hidden enemies. 55. First interception. Our first target, a small colony controlled secretly by the Silent Hand. The colony's defenses were advanced, but predictable. Using a combination of stealth maneuvers and tactical strikes, we disabled their energy grids without harming civilians. Lyriath coordinated the palace's remote surveillance drones, creating a combined strategy of human precision and Verithian technology. The Silent Hand operatives were captured, but more importantly, we uncovered intelligence on a larger network, a fleet preparing to attack the Verithian capital. 56. Rivalry and trust. During the journey, Lyriath and I shared moments of reflection. You continue to surprise me, she admitted. Your patience, your observation, it is alien to our way of thinking. I smiled faintly. The human way values timing and precision, not arrogance or pride. Her filaments pulsed slowly. I am learning that, though my pride resists. Perhaps, we make a better team than I thought. The bond between us had shifted from rivalry to a partnership forged in combat and strategy. 57. The fleet in shadow. Intelligence led us to the outer rim of a dense asteroid field where the Silent Hand's fleet had taken position. Ships were hidden among asteroids, cloaked in energy shields. Advanced weaponry threatened both our ship and the Verithian colonies beyond. Lyriath and I coordinated a strike plan, blending human tactics with Verithian technology. We understood, this confrontation could decide the fate of multiple star systems. 58. The battle begins. The Silent Hand fleet launched first, testing our response. I maneuvered our vessel expertly through asteroid belts, dodging energy blasts. Lyriath manipulated our ship's energy shields and deployed tactical decoys. Coordinated strikes disabled the enemy's lead ships, sending chaos through their formation. It was not just a battle of firepower, it was a test of strategy, anticipation, and silent communication. 59. The turning point. As the battle reached its peak, the Silent Hand deployed a massive warship larger than anything in the Verithian fleet. Its energy field was nearly impervious. Its weapons could destroy planets. And it was commanded by the Silent Hand's enigmatic leader, whose intelligence rivaled our own. Lyriath and I exchanged a glance. This was the ultimate test, for our skills, our strategy, and our trust in each other. I spoke quietly, we act together. Every move must be precise. Her nod was firm. Then let us show them the power of silence and action. 60. foreshadowing the final confrontation. The stage was set. The Silent Hand had revealed their full strength. The Varithian Empire's fate depended on our strategy. Elias, the human soldier, and Liriath, the Varithian princess, had become inseparable in purpose and action. The coming battle would test everything we had learned: patience, observation, precision, and the unspoken bond between rival and ally. The galaxy held its breath. Part 9. The Final Confrontation. The Silent Hand's fleet loomed across the asteroid belt, a massive, menacing formation. Their warships bristled with weapons, energy shields pulsated like living armor, and the leader's flagship radiated authority and menace. This was the culmination of months of plotting, a test that would determine the fate of the Varithian Empire and potentially the galaxy. Liriath stood beside me on the bridge of our ship, filaments glowing brightly. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded, calm but focused. "Ready as I'll ever be. Observation first, action second. Timing is everything." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, there was no rivalry, only trust. 61. The strategy. Our plan was audacious. Draw the enemy fleet into the asteroid field, where their numbers became a disadvantage. Disable their flagship's shields using a combination of stealth strikes and energy manipulation. Coordinate precise strikes on the fleet's command nodes to sow confusion and force retreat. Every move had to be perfect. One miscalculation could mean total annihilation. Liriath manipulated the ship's energy flows, redirecting shields, deploying decoys, and controlling tactical drones. I executed maneuvers with perfect precision, navigating asteroid fields, and exploiting every weak point in the enemy formation. 62. The battle begins. Energy blasts erupted across the belt, lighting up the void. The Silent Hand fleet was disciplined, coordinated, and deadly. Our small team seemed outmatched, but their arrogance underestimated human precision and Varithian ingenuity combined. Liriath and I moved as one, silently anticipating each other's actions, striking with timing that no enemy could predict. Ships collided with calculated force, drones zipped between asteroids, and the void itself became a deadly chessboard. 63. The flagship engagement. The Silent Hand leader's flagship loomed ahead, energy shields almost impenetrable. Liriath analyzed the shield's energy matrix, identifying a single timing window for disruption. I maneuvered our ship into position, using stealth thrusters and asteroid cover to approach undetected. Together, we struck the energy nodes in perfect synchronization, creating a cascading overload. The flagship shuddered violently. Shields failed in a brilliant flash, exposing the core systems. 64. The leader of the Silent Hand. The leader emerged on the flagship's bridge, a tall, imposing Varithian figure with an aura of control that rivaled the Queen herself. "You are bold, human," the leader said, voice amplified across the void. "And reckless." I replied calmly, "Observation and precision are not recklessness. They are survival." Liriath stepped forward, filaments flaring. "You underestimated what a human and a Varithian can accomplish together. That mistake ends today." The leader's ship unleashed a massive energy pulse. Liriath and I moved as one, neutralizing the attack with a combination of shield redirection and tactical interference. 65. The turning point. With the flagship exposed, our coordinated strikes disabled its weapons systems entirely. The Silent Hand fleet faltered, their ships scattered, and the leader's command fractured. The remaining warships either retreated or surrendered. Key operatives were captured, including the rogue advisors who had infiltrated the palace. The galaxy's outer systems, witnessing our precision strike, began reconsidering allegiances. Liriath and I watched from the bridge, our breathing steady but hearts pounding. The Silent Hand's grip on the galaxy had been broken. 66. Aftermath. Back at the Varithian Palace, the court celebrated the victory. Lyriatha's authority was strengthened, her leadership respected more than ever. I was no longer merely a human soldier, my presence had become a symbol of skill, patience, and alliance. Even the queen observed silently, a faint glow of approval in her filaments. Lyriath approached me privately, filaments glowing softly. "You have proven yourself beyond words," she said. "Not only as a soldier, but as a partner." I nodded. It was never about pride or words. Only observation, action, and trust. Her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. The rivalry that had begun with mockery had transformed into mutual respect and understanding. 67. A new era. With the Silent Hand defeated, the Varithian Empire stabilized. Alliances were forged across the galaxy. The palace's security protocols were strengthened, incorporating human insight and Varithian technology. Lyriath and I continued to work together, balancing diplomacy, strategy, and defense. The galaxy had changed, and so had we. She had learned that arrogance alone cannot command respect. I had learned that patience, observation, and courage can elevate even a single human among the stars. And though the Silent Hand remained a whispered threat in the corners of the galaxy, for now, the palace and the alliance we forged stood unbroken. 68. Conclusion. As the stars streaked past the palace windows, I realized how far we had come. From mockery and rivalry, through intrigue, infiltration, and near destruction, to trust, coordination, and victory. Lyriath looked at me, silent but understood. The galaxy had witnessed our actions. But more importantly, we had witnessed each other's strength. In a universe defined by power, pride, and strategy, the human soldier and the alien princess had forged a bond that transcended species, rivalry, and expectation. The adventure had ended, but our legend had just begun. The end.